forward to share them with you all. All right. Well, folks, welcome to the first Prairie Skies that we are presenting in 2021. This is also our first winter Prairie Skies because this is our first show after the winter solstice. So we're glad you all can join us, and we hope to show you what you can see this evening and over the next several evenings throughout the season. My name is Erik Johnson. You can see that over in the lower left-hand corner of my name. You see also my preferred pronouns. And you will also see here with us the producer of the shows at the Starkville Planetarium, Waylena McCully. She is the person who also produced our virtual backgrounds, which you are welcome to incorporate into your own Zoom meetings. You can find those actually on our website under resources. So those are a lot of fun for us to use. I have a lot of fun with virtual backgrounds myself. So as I go through this show, I'm going to share a number of things that you can see in the night sky using software that's on my office computer here. This is software that actually you can install on your own computer at home that you are welcome to do. It's called Stellarium. There are other cool pieces of software that we have found that we share from time to time as well. Not nearly as amazing as what you can do with Digistar, but I really love that you can simulate the night sky, you know, right from the comfort of your home in that way, to help you prepare your own evening of observing. Obviously, you're probably not going to get much observing done tonight. Yeah, you're shaking your head. Where's the snowing visual effects? So there's our snow falling to the ground. So at least under the skies I'm going to present to you, things are going to look pretty clear. Waylena has shared already a couple of links with you all in the chat. I encourage you all to use the chat to give us feedback. If you have a question that you really only feel comfortable asking out loud, raise your hand or mention it in the chat, and we will happily let you unmute your microphones to ask us that question. That'll be quite all right. And if you have certain requests that you'd like to see from us, that would be quite a fine thing to bring up as well. All right. So without any further ado, I'm going to now share my screen. Let me optimize screen sharing as well. And you will all see what I'm showing off in Stellarium here. So the sky that I'm presenting to you right now is what you would see at roughly around noontime today. I'm going to zoom out back just a little bit so you get a better sense of what we're looking at here. Notice that this is the view that you would get right outside of our own planetarium. You can also see Parkland's theater complex as well as our fine and applied arts wing. And that's how high up the sun would have gotten at noon today. You might notice something just to the left of the sun, by the way. You see that very, very thin crescent. You probably haven't seen the moon in the last couple of days, but we had new moon when the moon is right next to the sun only a couple of days ago. So that's why we have actually a very thin crescent right there. I have to admit, if I were looking around for the moon today and it were actually clear today, I probably would not have seen the moon in the sky at that time because those crescent moons, they can be really lost in the blue sky that we normally see. So even though you can see this in this software, it would be almost impossible to see on your own. The other thing is that we're actually kind of artificially enhancing the size of the moon in this image. Notice that it says it's ×4. So that moon is actually a lot larger than what you'd see truly in the sky. If you're curious about how big the moon would appear in the sky, what I can encourage all of you to do is hold your hand out at arm's length and then look basically at one of your fingernails. Even if you look at your pinky fingernail, the moon's going to be smaller in the sky than the width of your pinky fingernail right there. It does not take up that much size in the sky. It's actually only about ½ a degree. I know a lot of you, just about everybody, has this experience sometimes when you look at the moon and you go, wow, that moon looks humongous. But no matter when you see the moon in the sky, even when it looks huge when it's rising or huge when it's setting, compare it to what it looks like when it's really high up above the horizon. It's always going to look like it's that same size. It's quite a famous illusion, and I want you to pierce through that illusion by sticking your fingernail right in front of it. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and go a little bit later into the evening here. All right. So we're seeing the sun and the moon moving across the sky. It is going to set over here in the southwestern portion of the sky. Since this is winter, the sun's not up for very long, and it also sets very far south of east. Okay. You notice that right after sunset, we do see another bright object showing up right there. You folks might remember these events from last month. You heard about the conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn, and that's what's showing up right here just after sunset. It would be really low in the sky at about 5 o'clock, so you might barely be able to catch it. And notice that I've gone and proved myself wrong. Jupiter is actually even lower than what we're seeing here. This is actually the closest planet to the sun. It's the planet Mercury, okay?
Ooh, Erik, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment. Yeah. This is just a great moment for me to point this out. Mercury, it is so rare that we get to make note of it because it's so low in the sky whenever we can see it. Anytime I do get to see Mercury, I'm always impressed with how bright it is. I mean, it's not as bright as Jupiter, yeah, but it does seem about as bright as Saturn. And it just always blows my mind. Like, wow, it's so much brighter than I really remembered it to be. Of course, we only ever see it in the glare of the evening, the evening sunset or the early morning sunrise that's impending. But yeah, I mean, I had the same thing happen here, Erik. I looked and I was like, wow, wait, is that Jupiter? And then, whoa, yeah, it's Mercury. So I totally forgot that Mercury was going to be sneaking up higher. And it's always so much brighter than I remembered it from the last time.
Yeah, great points. I know that Mercury is never more than about 3 fist widths away from the sun, so it always sets very soon afterwards. What's nice is that early in the year, in the early months of the year, Mercury has its best opportunities to be visible after sunset. As opposed to later in the year, you'd have to see it before sunrise. But no matter what, it stays so close to the sun, it's really hard for us to see. And because of it zipping around the sun so quickly, that's why I forgot that Mercury would already be past Jupiter and Saturn where it's at right there. I'm going to do one thing for you folks. You see that you're having a hard time seeing Jupiter right now. I'm going to change our position where we're observing from to a local observatory run by the Champaign-Urbana Astronomical Society. It's called Prairie Winds Observatory. It's outside of Tolono, roughly between Tolono and Ivesdale, I believe. Oh, I'm sorry, Sodorus. And so you can see the observatory here. And notice that since it's out among the farmland, it has a much clearer view of our horizon. So Mercury is right here, and this other bright dot is going to be the planet Jupiter. And remember, Jupiter just went past Saturn last month, so that tells you that Saturn's right below the horizon here. Here, if I go back just a little bit, you'll probably have a hard time seeing Saturn, but I just want to see if we can catch this. And I can even cheat for a moment. I hope you folks don't mind me cheating.
Cheat.
I'm going to take away the atmosphere. So everybody hold your breath, please. There's Saturn. I found it. Okay, so Saturn's right there. Where's my stars? I must have turned them off. Didn't know I did that. Okay, so if you want to see how quickly Mercury is moving compared to Jupiter and Saturn, here's where they were the day before. Here's where they were the day before that. And you can see how Mercury is zipping past those two gas giants. Simply because it's so much closer to the sun, that's why its orbit is so much more quick. Okay, And then of course the moon zipped past them pretty well too. Unfortunately, because of all those clouds we've had lately, we missed this really cool conjunction right there, where you actually had these three planets in a nice, neat looking triangle. And of course, you had the moon in there hanging out with them too, a couple of days later. So yeah, all right, we're back to today now. Okay, let's go ahead and now we'll let the twilight leave our skies here. So this is what we would have seen if we didn't have snow coming down right now. And then right at about this moment, we would have also had a chance to see a satellite. And let me see if I can bring this up here. You folks are probably pretty well aware of the International Space Station. As for me, I've actually now built a Lego set of the International Space Station. I really need to show that off during more of these events. But the ISS was actually passing overhead this evening at about 6:37 p.m. All right. Now, the reason why I know that exact number is because I pulled it up off of a website. I'm going to ask Waylena to share this website. It's called heavensabove.com. And if you put in your location there, you can see exactly when many different satellites are passing overhead. I've used this website in the past to share through the Planetarium's Facebook page, warning about looking for the Starlink satellites, because it's always interesting to see that constellation of satellites passing overhead. And also with the ISS, that passing overhead is really cool too. And we've got the ISS passing overhead after sunset over the next 10 days, as a matter of fact. So if you have a clear night over the next couple of weeks, I encourage you to plan ahead using this website to see when the ISS is going over. Okay, there's a really good one actually on next Wednesday. As a matter of fact, the ISS will be pretty bright next Tuesday and Wednesday in the evening.
The phone app is marvelous to have with you too, because you can, if you're out somewhere under dark skies, you can just click on the map to see where it's going to appear.
Yeah, so let's see here. I think, where's my ISS? I'm seeing all sorts of other things moving across.
They're just flying all over the place there.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see here. I think oh, I see. It was actually a very quick passover today. It was actually only visible for about 9 seconds, so not very good of an example for today. It'll be a lot better tomorrow. So I must have missed it. But those other things zipping across there that you were seeing, those are other satellites. Because I'm always concerned about how this looks over a streaming setup like Zoom, I've kind of artificially enhanced the brightness of the stars as well as the satellites. So that's why you're seeing them so easily on here. Okay, so now this is the sky at roughly a few minutes ago. We're almost at about 7 p.m. right here. And by this point, you see that the skies are quite dark. And looking around, ooh, we got a lot of bright stuff over here. We are looking over in the eastern and southeastern portion of the sky right here. And I'm guessing that there's a few of these things you're actually pretty familiar with. Here, I'll go ahead and draw some lines to help connect the dots before I make it too obvious for you all. For instance, I always see these 4 bright stars right there, and I see these 3 stars forming a line right here. Okay, so what you're looking at right there, people have visualized this in all sorts of different ways. If you come into the planetarium, you might have even seen this looking like an hourglass or even a butterfly. Waylena, do you have a favorite shape that you show in the planetarium when you look at this constellation?
It varies. The fallback, I mean, sure, sometimes, you know, it's like, oh, springtime, I want butterflies, yay. But most of the time, though, I like the bow tie because bow ties are cool.
Bow tie's cool. I also like the dog bone that you have up there, too. That's always really fun. And I'll explain why the dog bone is just so thematically appropriate. But anyways, folks, you are looking at the stars of the constellation known as Orion. Okay, this is Orion the Hunter right here. So this bright star that I've just selected has a name that looks kind of hard to pronounce, but we usually are fine if you just call it Betelgeuse, okay? I usually say Betelgeuse, and then I'm told that I'm not allowed to say it a third time out of fears of invoking a movie that came out over 30 years ago, okay? And then there's another neat star over here on the right foot that's called Rigel. Maybe you've heard of that one as well. I've even had a student who had that name too. And then those of you who are Harry Potter fans, this name might arouse some suspicion for you because it's called Bellatrix, okay? You might remember that character from those movies and novels. But yes, Orion is the hunter, and naturally, if you have any hunter, you also have to consider that he might have some dogs that helps him in his hunt. I'm going to go ahead and go about an hour later so that the dogs get a little bit more visible for all of you. There we go. Wow, watching those stars just popping into view as they get higher up, it's pretty neat. Okay, so the way to get to the first of these stars, I always use Orion's belt and I point as a line down from them to what is the brightest star in the night sky. And I'm really not joking here. I am totally serious. And I can never, ever stop doing that terrible pun. Okay. But that's what just happened again. So the star Sirius is the brightest star in the sky and also the brightest star in the constellation Canis Major. And the way that Stellarium connects the dots between the stars in that constellation, you can really see how this represents a dog. This is the constellation of the big dog right there. Now, if you see that that's the big dog, you know that there's got to be another constellation that represents a little dog. All we have to do for that is go up a little higher, and you can find another bright star. This one's called Procyon, and there's Canis Minor right there. So you've got Canis Major and Canis Minor, Orion's two hunting dogs. Now you can see why it's really fun to imagine the 7 stars of Orion as a big dog bone, because, you know, what else is going to get their attention? Okay. Now,
chase a butterfly.
Yeah, maybe they would want to chase a butterfly. I can't dispute that. And of course, you know, they also might be hunting rabbits. Okay, so there you've got Lepus there as well. Now, I want to mention one other funny thing with this because it's just a silly joke that I always find amusing. People wonder about what constellation lies between the 2 hunting dogs right down here. You'll notice that there aren't many bright stars in that constellation. Here, I'll pick one random one, and you're going to see exactly which constellation this is. It's called Monoceros, which is the Latin word meaning unicorn. And you can see the unicorn right there. I will tell you, if I've ever gone and looked up in the night sky in this part of the sky, I never, ever see Monoceros. And that makes sense because unicorns are mythical, right? So there you go. It makes sense to have a constellation that is not visible to us be of a mythical object. Works perfectly, and obviously does not apply for all the other mythical things that I'm going to show you. All right, so I'm going to turn off all of that there for now. I wanted to share with you one other constellation in this part of the sky that I find really interesting. We're going to take Orion's belt and we're going to follow the line from the belt over to the right. You'll notice that you can actually see this bright V shape of stars right here. And we'll come back to that one in a moment, but I wanted to show you this interesting cluster of stars right there, all right? And I don't want to give this away by giving the name here in just a moment. I'm just going to select, darn it, I totally forgot about that. I'm just going to select one of the stars here, one of the stars right there. I think I still have it. And I'm going to zoom in on that object. Still have the artwork up, all right. There we go. Okay, so here is this beautiful cluster of stars, and that I know is a photograph of it, but I have to say, if you have a pair of binoculars, I really encourage you to look at this cluster in the night sky when you get a chance, okay? You can see there that the bright stars kind of look like a tiny, tiny little dipper. It's not the Little Dipper here, though. What you are looking at is something referred to as the Seven Sisters or as the Pleiades, okay? You are seeing the Pleiades right here. Now, you might have seen these Seven Sisters in another place as well. Notice that one of the other names that you have that I've displayed up here is Subaru. And that's because the Japanese name for this group of stars is Subaru, okay? And that car company actually got their name from this cluster of stars. This is one of the closest clusters in the night sky to us. You can easily see it without a telescope or binoculars, but I just recommend you look at it with binoculars because it looks so spectacular. Okay, so that's just my personal preference there of recommendation. Now, you already saw when I made my flub earlier what constellation this is a part of. And here, I'll bring it back up one more time. You see it's part of the bull. The Seven Sisters appear to be riding on the back of the bull. That's a big bull if it can hold 7 women. And then that V shape I was showing you right there forms the head of the bull. And the bull's name is Taurus, which just is the Latin word for bull. You'll notice that with Taurus, it appears to be facing off against Orion. When I'm trying to teach constellations to my students in my astronomy classes, I often have them imagine that Orion the hunter is actually hunting the bull Taurus. Okay, it's just an easy way to help you remember it right there. Okay, now I do notice here in the sky, whoops, I accidentally clicked on the river. All right, we can ignore that. Oh, I'm not ignoring that very well. Okay. I also noticed that I have actually been ignoring another planet that's up here in the sky at this moment. All right. Let's see here. Do I have it up there? Oh, yes. Yes, I do. Okay. So you folks already saw where Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn are. But in the software, the biggest way you can tell where this next one is just by looking for its color. Perhaps you know of a planet that looks really, really red. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Well, that's how I found this one just now. Our red planet is right here, just down and to the right of Taurus. Okay, here I'll click on it and I'll zoom in and I'll give you a nice close look at the planet Mars. So here's Mars right there. Oh, look at that. We've got a couple of things right next to it. Those are Mars's 2 moons that orbit around it. They're not moons like the size of our moon. They're really, really small, only a few miles across, as a matter of fact. But there is Mars in the view from Stellarium right there. You probably wouldn't get a view like this through any telescope you have. So let's at least just enjoy this simulated view here. What's really cool about the simulated view, do you folks notice this scar or gash that you can see right there? That is a humongous canyon on the surface of Mars. It's called Valles Marineris. It was first seen about 40 years ago by one of the Mariner space probes that was flying past the planet right there. That's where it got its name. And this canyon is a lot bigger than our own Grand Canyon. It actually is thousands of miles long. It would basically stretch from the Pacific coast to the Atlantic coast of the United States. So yeah, that's humongous, okay? It's just an amazing feature to look at on the surface of this planet. Now, some people wonder about why Mars is so red. Well, when you find red stuff here on Earth, usually you know that there's a lot of iron involved in it. You're probably thinking of stuff like rust, and that's a good way to think about what's going on Mars. There's a lot of rusty, dusty material all over the surface there, okay? All right, we'll continue zooming back out. Now, one thing that I can show you about why you would find Mars in that spot in the sky, I'm going to put up a line that I share from time to time during these shows. Okay, this line you can see it says it's called the ecliptic, is what you're looking at here. Notice that the ecliptic is actually running through, oops, sorry about that, is running through, am I going to get it back there? Oh, I'm not. Okay, let's try this one more time. It's running through the constellation of Taurus. Okay. And it also goes through the constellation that Mars is currently in, which is actually the Ram Aries. And let's see if I can get our next one here. Oh, I'm really having a hard time seeing it. Oh yeah, I think this is one of them. Oh, that is definitely not it. Well, Cetus is not there. I was trying to get one of them in Pisces. It's not a very bright constellation. And then over to the left of Taurus, you can find these two bright stars that are about the same brightness, almost like they're twins. That's Gemini right there, okay? And then a little dimmer constellation right here. This one's Cancer, and then we've got Leo right there. I'm guessing a lot of those constellations are pretty familiar to all of you because those are the constellations of the zodiac. The point of the zodiac, folks, is that these are the constellations that the sun passes through over the course of the year, all right? It's what we see here from Earth, but in reality, it's based off of Earth orbiting around the sun, okay? And in addition to that, the planets also happen to have very similar orbits to that of Earth, so they actually stay very close to the ecliptic as well. And also the moon's orbit around Earth is pretty close to the ecliptic. So you'll find over the course of their orbits, all of the planets and the moon all seem to follow similar paths to that of the sun. So you can see why the zodiac became so significant to astronomers and to astronomers since ancient times, because they would see the planets and the sun and the moon all moving through those same constellations year after year, okay? So at this moment, you do see Mars is in the constellation of the Ram right there. And eventually it's going to move into that of the Bull and so on. All right, let's see if I can turn all of those off there. And we will, oh, I guess we're down to Leo over in that area. Leo, we don't talk about a whole lot quite yet. I believe, yeah, you're looking at a sky at about 9 o'clock here. So this might be past the bedtime for a few of you. But Leo, we generally refer to as more of a spring constellation because of how you can see it all throughout the night during the spring months. So we won't focus a whole lot on that one right here. Let's see here. Where do I want to go with this next? I think what I'll do is I will go a little later into the evening here. We can watch Leo come up, and I will also note that we've got another famous group of stars that I should start to talk about as well. But I'm going to wait until they get really high up in the sky. Okay, so I think 2 a.m. is good right here. Is everybody staying up till 2 a.m. with me? Yeah, I know, you're probably getting very tired from what I just said. Okay, I'll scroll up way high up here. There we go, I'm seeing it pretty well up at the top here. And with this one, let me see if I've got this right. I saw there's a comment in the chat. I don't know if I can read it. Apparently I'm not getting that to load up correctly. Oh well. I'll leave that to Waylena to check. I don't know, I'm not getting it to display right now. All right, so this next group of stars that I wanted to share with you might be a little disorienting at this moment because honestly, from the way I normally see it, it's actually kind of upside down. To help you out with seeing this, and I don't want to give it away immediately, I'll just connect the dots for you. We've got these 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stars right there. Do you know which one we're talking about now? Kristen's not staying up till 2 a.m. There we go. Okay. So what you're seeing right here is the group of stars that you might call the Big Dipper. Okay, so that's the Big Dipper right there. Now, when I click on it in Stellarium, you're not going to see the Big Dipper mentioned as a label, and you'll actually probably see a few extra stars connected with all of this. Take a look. Yeah, you see a lot more right there. There's a lot more than 7 stars that are a part of this. Notice that even when I put up the artwork, you don't see a dipper, like a little drinking gourd. You don't see that. You actually see this big bear. And that's because the official name of the constellation in the sky happens to be Ursa Major, which is the Latin meaning big bear. So what you see is the handle of the big bear, of the Big Dipper, ends up being Ursa Major's very anatomically incorrect tail. Okay. Now, that's all right. I think you're more than welcome to see it one way or another. And another cool thing with Stellarium is that you can actually see how these groups of stars look different to different cultures, because stars of different cultures were used to tell different stories, and they had different cultural significances. So that's another wonderful thing about this software, that you can go and explore to learn various histories throughout the world. But for our purposes of helping you identify other things in the sky, I'm going to draw one more line for you all. And we're going to go from these 2 stars farthest away from the handle of the Big Dipper, and we're going to draw them way past down here. Okay? These 2 stars, Merak and Dubhe, are called the pointer stars for this reason. All right? And what they are pointing to is this star down here, which is called Polaris. You might know it as the North Star. That's another good way to put it. It's also called the Pole Star. You can see how Polaris sounds like Pole Star, and that's actually because this star is very close to the North Celestial Pole, which you can now see right there. Notice that Polaris is also a part of a separate constellation, which you see there is called Ursa Minor. You can imagine that, again, is another minor thing. So we're talking about it being the little bear, all right? And this one, despite that adorable bear, teddy bear face right there, has a really anatomically incorrect tail. So that's kind of silly right there. But I'm guessing from just looking at the stars, you might not see that as a little bear. You're probably recognizing it as a companion to the Big Dipper that I just pointed out to you all. You're seeing a Little Dipper right there. So if you want to call that the little bear, Ursa Minor, or the Little Dipper, all those are perfectly fine. You can see how this takes up a much larger part of the sky than the Pleiades did as well. So over the course of a night, what you can see with Ursa Major and with Ursa Minor, here I'll zoom out just a little bit here. We're looking over towards the north. You will see how the stars have risen and set. They rise over in the east and they set over in the west. But the way that they're moving right now, you can see how they're actually all moving around Polaris. That's what's so important when you find the star Polaris. You're going to see a star that hardly moves at all. Since it's the pole star, it is basically directly above Earth's North Pole. And so because Earth's spinning is what's causing these stars to move, since that's right above Earth's North Pole, the pole's not going to spin around or move around all that much. So it's going to stay pretty fixed in the sky from our point of view. If you go back to the age of navigation where people had to use the stars and not GPS to find their way anywhere in the world or over the oceans, you can imagine how important Polaris was for helping people know which way north was. That's why we call it the North Star. It's always north, all right? So no matter what time of the night, you're gonna find that always in the north. And if you're having trouble finding Polaris, perhaps you want to use those 2 pointer stars in the Big Dipper that I just shared with you. Okay. All right. So I've covered a lot of things up here, and I want to always keep these things relatively short because I know that you folks have enough meetings in your daily lives anyways. But let's go ahead and we'll continue on late into the morning. So this is the sky at a little bit after 5 o'clock, and I've noticed one constellation is just finally starting to come up, but whoo, sorry about that. I hit the wrong button there. I'm using my keyboard shortcuts and I accidentally gave us a premature sunrise. So this is the sky at about 6:30. You'd probably have a hard time seeing many of these stars by this moment. This would be when the twilight would be starting to really drown them out. But I do notice that we're actually starting to get some of our summer constellations right here, including a star that a lot of us have a lot of fun with. This one right here is actually called Antares. For those of you who are familiar with your Greek and Roman mythology, you might know of Ares as the god of war. Do you folks know the Roman name for the god of war? I'm just going to pretend that you said it, and that's okay. We are talking about Mars. So the point is, Antares got its name because of the way that this star looks compared to the planet that is represented by the Roman god of war. Antares actually happens to lie very close to the ecliptic. So it's conceivable that people would look at Mars going past this star and want to compare the color of these two celestial bodies. So Antares was named as a rival to Mars. So what we jokingly say about the name of this star is that it's essentially not Mars. That's where the name Antares came from. So if you want to be a bit of a smart aleck, and you see this star in your early morning sky or much later this summer, and you point that out, somebody wants to ask you the name of that star, you just tell them, oh yeah, it's not Mars. And you can just leave it at that. All right. The last thing I'm going to show you, you see there's another object here on the ecliptic. This is actually the last planet that I would be sharing with you in this evening. And it'd be the last thing you'd see before sunrise, as a matter of fact, as well. What you're looking at right here is the object that we often call the morning star or the evening star. And here, I will zoom in on it. Whoops, there we go. You are looking at the planet Venus right there. The planet that's closest in size to Earth. All right, but you never get to get a good view of the surface because the entirety of this planet is covered in clouds. Okay, so yeah, it's every day on Venus is a cloudy day. They never get to see the stars at night because of the clouds that cover that planet. Now, Venus is coming up barely before sunrise. And that's because Venus is very quickly moving behind the sun at this moment. So Venus is going to get harder and harder to look at over the coming days. But then eventually Venus is going to move behind the sun and we'll start to see it as an evening star again. But unfortunately, going throughout this year, it's going to take several months before you see it high up in the sky after sunset. But that's something to look forward to throughout the year of 2021. All right, so let's let that sun come back up here. Here we go. Oops. There's our sun. Wonderful. So there's Venus leading the sun on in the sky. And that's our next day. All right. So yeah, if you folks were tired at 2 a.m., now what I can tell you is that you've now been up all night. This is the sky tomorrow if we actually have some clear skies. Okay. So yeah, I would say, folks, get some rest and, check your weather forecast to see what you could plan to observe in your own night sky. And hopefully what you've seen tonight will help you be prepared for what you could have a chance to look for. Do you have any questions for us, folks? You're very welcome, Cheryl. Oh, yes, absolutely, Kristen. The only major challenge you might get is that if you have a MacBook, there's sometimes some hassles that you're having to install a third-party app. And that's just because you're not downloading it from the App Store. That would be the major challenge. And then if you can't actually successfully get it installed, they actually have a web-based version of the software. So if you just go to that link, you can try to simulate the sky that way. It's pretty cool. Oh, Waylena just posted the link to that. How coordinated of us. Hi, did you have a question for us? You can unmute yourself if you'd like. You have not unmuted yourself yet, so see if you can do that.
There we go. Okay, my husband had a question.
Of course, take your time.
Do we know what caused the canyon on Mars?
Oh, so there's a couple of great factors that contributed to this. The Valles Marineris is very close to this incredible volcanic upthrusted region known as the Tharsis Montes. Okay, there are lots of extremely tall volcanoes in that area, and it's not that far from Olympus Mons either. So in that area, there was a lot of is upthrust the right word I want to use for this, Waylena? But the point is that portion of the crust is tremendously elevated. And this is a region of the crust that essentially initially buckled from all of this. And based off of the age of this valley, it's coming from a time when Mars's atmosphere was thick enough and the greenhouse effect was strong enough that water could exist as a liquid on the surface. So in addition to that kind of fracturing of the crust in that area, it was widened based off of the influence of water erosion. They can see at the lower ends of this valley some classic ways of seeing what looks like essentially a river delta, okay? And let me see if I can share with you a really good picture I have of this. And this is one that I show in my astronomy classes. So I'm pulling out my slides right now just because you asked, so you're welcome. Thanks for your patience, folks. It's just a thought I wanted to share with you all. Let's see here. And I'll put up my captions because that's always something fun to do with this. All right, there we go. Can you all see what I've shared? Waylena, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so right here is where Tharsis Montes is. You can see the extremely tall volcanoes right there, and there's Olympus Mons. And then this area that's in blue and green, that's Valles Marineris. Okay, so there you can see that fracturing, and all this red here is showing how high of an elevation that is. So you can see the crack there, and you can see how at the end of this, notice how it seems to really spread out, just like what you see with a river delta, like with the Mississippi and whatnot.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so JC has a question in the chat. Can you see Neptune during the day or night? I will say, first off, without using a telescope, no. Okay, Neptune's not very bright. It was not known since ancient times, like the planets I just showed you on Stellarium. It had to be discovered, and it was discovered about 175 years ago. I forgot how long it's been. It was discovered roughly 175 years ago. But if you have a telescope and you know exactly where to look, you can find it. I can pop up Stellarium here one more time and show you exactly where it would be. I believe Neptune's in our evening sky. I think it's roughly in Aquarius or Capricornus this evening. So we'll see exactly where that is. I'm going to cheat and just do this. Cheating makes things quicker. All right, let's take a look. What constellation? That's Aquarius right there. And you see it's actually very close to the moon tonight. So the moon zips past it about once a month. That's just the way it goes. Notice that the area that's been selected, You can't see any stars right there, nor can you see any planet right there. We'll have to center on it and zoom in, and eventually you'll see that nice, very azure object. Is that a star right next to it, or is that actually just the brightest moon? Might be Triton. Yep, it's Triton. Okay. It's just the way that the brightness is amplified. Okay. But yes, I've seen Neptune with a telescope, and it does have a deeper blue color than what you find with other objects. But in my 6-inch telescope, I have a very hard time seeing an actual disk, an actual circle. It probably looks a lot like what you see of Neptune right now. Okay. All right. It looks like Waylena answered Kristen's great question there. Oh yes, I'm glad you brought up the idea of following the drinking gourd to freedom. That is fantastic. Yes, absolutely. Ooh, great question, Barbara. I bet you I can actually answer that one about rovers that are on the planet Mars right now. I will show you how I've answered that. We're going back to my lecture slides. Here we go. All right. Do you see this one of the full topographic map of Mars aside from its polar regions?
Yes.
Okay, so there's Valles Marineris again. There's the Tharsis Montis and Olympus Mons. Right here, MP stands for Mars Pathfinder. You might remember a Mars mission that landed on the surface about 25 years ago. So this is the one from the 1990s. Then you might remember the Viking missions from the 1970s. VL1, Viking Lander 1, and VL2 right there. So what you can see is that Viking Lander 1 and Mars Pathfinder are basically at the delta, the base of where Valles Marineris had its water outflows lead up to this area in the north. Okay, the Opportunity rover that landed along with Spirit about 20 years ago, those are right there. I think if I click this button, you're about to see where Curiosity is and Insight. I did not put on here the exact landing site for Perseverance, but if memory serves, and I'm going to let Waylena correct me on this, I think since if this is Syrtis Major, I think the Jezero crater is right about where my cursor is. Does that sound right to you, Waylena? Awkward pause.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. I put you
My
on the
mouse was
spot.
hovering in the wrong spot, so I was hitting the space bar and making spaces appear in a document over here.
That's okay.
So yeah, that's pretty close to it.
Okay, I thought I hit the right spot because I remembered this humongous basin
Yes.
right here that it was at the northwest corner of it. Okay, so that's roughly where that one's going. Now, what I am not able to tell you are two things. Is the UAE mission an orbiter? Is that right? I don't remember where that one's going. And I believe the Chinese also launched one successfully. And that one, I don't remember if we have a confirmed landing site for that yet.
I've heard.
Because I think we had 3 successful launches to Mars last summer. So those will be, there's going to be a lot of things going on Mars this year. JC, that's a great question about when Uranus's ring was discovered. That actually happened around 40 some years ago, around 1978. What was cool was that Uranus was predicted, and it did happen, to pass in front of a distant star. They call this event an occultation. And what's really great about these events is that you can get a good exact gauge of how big an object is when it passes in front of a star. But the funny thing was, they saw the star's brightness dip 3 times before Uranus passed in front of the star and after Uranus was done passing in front of the star. And the only thing that could have caused that was a ring system. And now we can actually see this from Earth a lot better using infrared observations. So, yeah. I have a GIF for the Uranus one if you want to see it. I bet you they do. So I'm going to show it.
I do.
There we go. That's at least one support. All right, let's see if I can pull this off. One more time, sharing a screen, but it's a different file. Can you all see that? All right, so there's the 3 dips. You're seeing the light curve at the bottom there. Now you're seeing how the star is being completely occulted by Uranus. It stopped being occulted, and 3 more dips. So now we're going to zoom in, and you're going to see what would have caused that sort of thing to occur. So that's a crude animation of what the ring system would look like right there. Okay. So yeah, it's a triple ring system right there. And we nowadays, using stuff like Hubble and the Keck telescopes in Hawaii, we can see it from Earth. We can see that ring system pretty nicely. But looking through a telescope on your own, you're not going to be able to see it. It's just not bright enough. It's not as awesome as Saturn's rings are. Okay. Other questions, folks?
Mark calendars for your February 18th.
Oh, yes. Okay. So a couple of upcoming events that we want to tell you all about. We're continuing our schedule throughout these coming months, where we will have our Prairie Skies shows every 2 weeks, basically. So our next show is going to be on January 29th. But the next show after that will be the week after, because that will be the first Friday of the month. And that will be our next Kaler Science lecture. Our lecturer is going to be a professor from the departments of geology and plant biology. Her name is Dr. Jessica Conroy, and she's going to share us lots of cool things about paleoclimatology. And so that will be our speaker then. And then Waylena will be giving an amazing presentation, which we call Prairie Skies Spotlight, after that Kaler lecture. It will be another tour of the night sky, but we always take these Prairie Skies Spotlights and focus on something of interest. Sometimes it's a thing of our own interest. Sometimes it's a cool astronomy event. And in this case, it's going to be going back to, again, those Mars landings that we're talking about. The Mars 2020 mission, the Perseverance lander and that Ingenuity helicopter, they're going to land on Mars on, I believe, February 18th in the afternoon, our time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, in the afternoon.
So we are planning to promote that as much as possible, because anytime we've got something cool going on with space missions, we got to be a part of that. And we're going to launch those promotions with that Prairie Sky Spotlight in 3 weeks. Okay, that'll be at 8 p.m. is when we'll be presenting that after the Kaler lecture. Okay.
Whoa.
All right. Any other questions you folks have for us?
Well, Eric, I think we're pretty much wrapped up. We'll go ahead and we'll get this recording up on our YouTube.
That's right. That's right. You can find this video up on YouTube, and because we've got a YouTube channel that we now share. And I thank you all for joining us tonight.